the January 6th show trials may be the original and ultimate whataboutism. See, whataboutism, just to be clear, is what your kid might say to you if you punish them for, I don't know, like stealing a cookie before dinner, and you don't punish their sibling for the same thing. Whataboutism often is used to debunk someone's argument. Oh, you're just using whataboutism, bringing up someone else's wrongs to deflect from what you did wrong. Well, yeah, when it comes to the January 6th Capitol riots, you're right. It's whataboutism, but not the way you think. See, the left trying to hold January 6th as relative to the years of lawless violence and destruction, that is the original whataboutism. So let's acknowledge this January 6th show trial for what it actually is. It's a political witch hunt. There are a few arguments that Democrats are making for this January 6th investigation. One is that we just dang nearly lost our republic. Now, we all know that's a joke. As I've said before, the Viking horns cosplay guy, the guy who actually was like whining in jail because he didn't get organic food, and that's completely God's honest truth, they were not moments away from commandeering our nuclear arsenal. The republic was not going to fall. It is not the worst attack since the Civil War.
I use an analogy to describe what I want as a hitman. If a hitman is hired and he kills somebody, the hitman goes to jail. But not only does the hitman go to jail, but the person who hired them does. There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that.
You understand what Officer Dunn is implying here, right? It's you. You're the hitman. You and 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump. You caused that hit on the Capitol of unarmed people. What else could Officer Dunn mean, right? I mean, the metaphor is that Trump acted as a hitman that day on January 6th, and then the implication that he's making is that the people that put Trump up to the hit are obviously the 75 million plus voters that voted for Trump. What Officer Dunn did there is to reveal the actual point of this entire political opera. This isn't about putting rioters from January 6th on trial. And by the way, they're arrested and they are on trial. And we have two separate investigations plus this commission. No, this is about putting you on trial. It's about tarring, discrediting, and disqualifying you, just by association, from being a legitimate participant in civil society. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the goal. This brings me to one of my final points. And whataboutism that I should point out. The January 6th riots have been roundly condemned by everyone, and I mean everyone, across party lines. But what about condemnation of the many BLM Antifa riots that injured really thousands of civilians and police? This collectively, even putting the attack on the White House aside on May 30th, that you saw footage of earlier, these were attacks on the fabric of society itself, a society that will not condemn endless rioting against police, against the government. A society cannot possibly hold together. So what about the condemnation of BLM and Antifa? Where's the commission for them? Where are the condemnations from the Democrats? Where's the FBI Tiger Team to investigate these groups? Where's the commission to find, arrest, and make every rioter who injured an officer pay for their crimes? Why don't Republicans have officers coming up and testifying in a hearing? Why didn't they do this before they ended up losing more seats? There is no commission, and this is why no one cares. Or at least people don't care about the January 6th commission because they feel that it's unfair and it hasn't, and the law hasn't been equally applied. And as a result, they've come to the conclusion that it's entirely disingenuous. Everyone gets that. It's political theater. It's designed to ostracize 75 million people for holding conservative views by rebranding them all as hitmen or white supremacists or people who struggle with white rage. I mean, to wrap it up, the other tell that this was nothing but a charade, was it that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats think that what do they think they're gonna find other than what they've already told us is the cause of the riots? I mean, it's not like they haven't told us the cause behind January 6th from the beginning. They already know. According to the media and Democrats, it was all caused by Trump and Trump voters, not a smaller group of rioters that broke away from the peaceful protest, which is the actual truth, by the way. Sidebar, I had a friend who works for a video wire service who was there getting video that ended up, you can see on news outlets that's what their job was, and he was there getting video, and his wife was blowing his phone up. He finally answered it, and she was so upset. She was like, have you been watching the TV? And he was on one side of the Capitol, and apparently everyone else was on the other side of the Capitol, which if you've ever been to the Capitol complex, it's a pretty big complex. I've been there before. I've been there before on the same day to speak at 2 different events on either side of the Capitol. That's not a joke. So he didn't know that that was already happening. And so he went and was filming some of the exterior stuff because people who were there, they were going to food trucks and they were hanging out and doing, I mean, but Democrats want to present it as everyone there was a rioter. You had a smaller group of rioters, and by all means, people who committed assault and people who committed property destruction, absolutely charge them. I'm a taxpayer that helps to pay for the White House. I don't like my property vandalized. Now, Democrats know these answers that I asked because that's the only answers they're ever going to consider. This is why they won't allow any actual conservatives to be involved in their commission, because they already know the answer. They blame Trump voters who were motivated by white supremacy. That's the answer, according to Democrats. And remember, before there was ever a talk of a commission, media and Democrats told us this exact story over and over. Does anyone believe that there's any other reason that they're going to discover that anything else that they will find out as the cause for the riots? Now, climate change? I don't know. For instance, are they going to probe the possible role that Antifa and BLM agitators may have played that day? A lot of people have talked about it. You can't even bring it up, apparently. Don't talk about the fact that the one guy who took video and sold it to CNN of Alicia Babbitt, who was shot there in the hallway entering the chamber, that was a guy who actually is a leftist activist. This is all fact, and he did take video footage of it and sold it to cable news, and that's what they ended up airing. But let's not talk about that because that has nothing to do with January 6th, right? That's what we're told. Will Democrats address at all the possible embedding? Will they talk about this? Because think about the Gretchen Whitmer kidnap scheme. There were FBI agents that were involved in the inception of it. When you have even everyone from hardcore evangelical Republicans to capital L libertarians all talking about entrapment, there might be some common ground there. But you can't talk about any of this. What about the lack of preparation by our government that day? Let's return really quickly to that Bill Barr interview. This was after the attack on May 30th that was on the White House, because here, Barr's being accused of being too harsh on the rioters because, of course, May 30th during the siege on the White House, he was, I guess you were just supposed to let people run rampant. But pay attention to Barr's answer because it's incredibly relevant to the Capitol Police response, or lack thereof, on January 6th. Here he talks about why it's necessary for the police to be incredibly prepared when dealing with riots or even the potential for riots. Watch.
It's important when you're dealing with civil disturbances to have adequate forces at hand and out and about so you can control events and not be controlled by events. And that it's more dangerous for everybody if you have these wild melees with thinly manned police lines running after protesters with batons. And that it's important to have adequate forces on the street. And so we were encouraging them where they were stretched thin to call out National Guard if necessary to restore order. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so what about that? Will this January 6th commission, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, they've convened, are they going to look into the lack of preparation, the lack of Capitol Police or National Guard presence? I have to tell you, I mean, I've been to so many different events at the Capitol, so many protests, so many rallies, et cetera, et cetera. I have never been to one that is either left or right where there wasn't a ton of police. And I'm talking about the Capitol complex. What happened that day is exactly what Bill Barr described. The lack of preparation for January 6th was insane. The Capitol building already had a kind of a security problem. If you've ever talked to anyone who works in the press and is working in D.C., they'll tell you. But we all know a commission is not going to find anything other than what they've already decided is the reason for this. I don't even know why they convened a commission because they already have their answer. All this is designed to do is one thing: put about 75 million people on trial for a crime that Democrats decided that they've already committed. You can simultaneously condemn the acts of violence perpetrated by those who, as I said, broke away from the peaceful gathering on January 6th, and also with full confidence state that Democrats are hyping up that afternoon as a way to absolve themselves of the years of leftist violence that they not only encouraged, but promoted bail funds for and used as a get-out-the-vote mechanism. Democrats have zero moral authority or consistency here. They should match me in my consistent condemnation. And when they and the left at large acknowledge the violence of their fellow ideologues in their left-run cities, when the media can stop lionizing and defending and ignoring and more ignoring the violence, stop blaming Trump for the attacks on journalists covering the riots, when big tech can stop enabling the violence of the left, when the entirety of the left can match just 1% of the consistency that we have had on the right towards violence as some sort of legitimate form of protest, then they can speak out on January 6th. Unfortunately, without their doing any of this, we're left to assume that they don't know actual violence or an insurrection so much when they see it. Thus their silence on Antifa and BLM. Because of this, their remarks are wholly without legitimacy.